you tell me if you can tell me who the author of this quote is. Beginning with the development of a strategy, my role can be defined as helping our country to be ready for any kind of adverse public health event, including a response to any challenges the future may bring. Do you know who said that? Who? You did. That's exactly right. In Penn Medicine article. And your bio page says that you are the Secretary for Preparedness and Response, and your work has included evaluating public health preparedness, conducting 32 tabletop exercises on hypothetical crises such as smallpox, anthrax, botulism, plague, pandemic influenza. Another story on you and your career, which is an incredibly commendable career, said your job is to plan for the unthinkable. A global flu pandemic, she has a plan. A bioterror attack, she's on it. Massive earthquake, yep, she's got a plan. It's a mission that includes both science and a communication strategy. So I was sitting there, Dr. Lurie, thinking, here we have a doctor with an incredible background in medicine who also happens to have planned for crises like Ebola, whose job description also includes communication strategy. So why in the hell did the president pick a lawyer to be the Ebola czar and not you?
So I appreciate your questions. Before I answer your question, can I take just one moment to clarify my answer about the quarantine question, because I think I didn't understand it fully. CDC has ample quarantine authority to do what it needs to do. I think and it's used those authorities many, many times. The proposed regulation would have refined the process we have used, but the underlying statute already gives CDC the authority that it's needed. Okay. So with that clarification, I just wanted to...
The record is now complete with respect to your position on quarantine. Okay. Now, I want the record to be complete on why in the world the president picked a dadgum lawyer to head the Ebola crisis instead of somebody with your vast and varied background.
And I appreciate the vote of confidence. The role of the Ebola coordinator in the White House is a whole of government coordination role.
Well, I appreciate that, Dr. Lurie, but Mr. Klain is not a doctor. He's not an osteopath. He's not a nurse. He's not an epidemiologist. He doesn't have a background in communicable disease. He doesn't have a background in infectious disease. He doesn't have a background in West Africa. So how in the world is he the best person to be the Ebola czar and not you? And I don't want to hurt her career. I do not want to hurt Secretary Burwell's career, and I fear that I will by complimenting her. But she's an incredibly bright person. One of the more capable people I have met in the last 10 years is your boss, the Secretary of HHS. Now, we disagree, in fairness to her, on lots of policy. But she actually has a background through her work, the Gates Foundation, in global health. You're a doctor. I mean, if this were an outbreak of people who don't have wills in West Africa, or if this were an outbreak on contested elections in West Africa, then I'd say, yeah, go hire Mr. Klain. But it's not. It's a medical crisis. So why not you?
So right now, I have a full-time job doing my job in the Department of Health and Human Services. I really appreciate the vote of confidence, and I have a lot of confidence in Mr. Klain.
Well, how about another doctor? How about somebody who's an expert in infectious disease, or an expert in West Africa, or the delivery of health care? I mean, God forbid we pick somebody with a background in medicine instead of a dadgum lawyer. And in the interest of full disclosure, I am one.
So with respect, I think that the role of the coordinator at the White House doesn't require a doctor. It requires somebody who is really expert at coordination and bringing the parts of government together to enhance the coordination.
Well, I'm going to make you this promise, okay? And I want you to hold me to it, okay? The next time there's an opening on the Supreme Court, I want you to see whether or not the president considers a doctor or a dentist for that job. And we actually are about to have... When you said they proposed it and that passed because the American people are too stupid to understand the difference.
When I said that, I was at an academic conference, being glib and quite frankly trying to make myself seem smart by insulting others.
Are you offering the venue as a defense for saying it or for meaning it?
I'm offering it as a defense for using inappropriate and hurtful and inexcusable language to express.
Well, what did you mean by too stupid to understand the difference?
Congressman, I didn't mean anything by it.
Well, you said it. You had to admit it.
I was once again being glib and trying to make myself seem smarter by reflecting.
Well, what did you mean when you said it was a very basic exploitation of the lack of economic understanding of the American voter? What did you mean by that?
Once again, it's another example of my inexcusable arrogance and trying to insult others to make myself seem smarter.
Well, what did you mean when you said the American people don't care about the uninsured?
Once again, that was an overstatement of trying to conjecture on political topics in which I'm not an expert.
Well, you know what, Professor Gruber, I have listened to you all morning talk about your lack of political acumen and that you're not a politician, so therefore you don't know not to call people stupid. Most of the people watching this morning aren't politicians, and they don't call people stupid. And I can't help but note, Professor Gruber, and another one of your quotes, which I'll read to you, that was politically infeasible. You remember saying that?
Yes.
So you do like to factor in the politics from time to time, don't you? And also happen to note, Professor Gruber, that usually you insult the American voter, not the American public. So you do factor in politics, don't you?
I have tried a number of occasions, pretended that I know more about politics.
Do you think not being a politician is a defense? And is that your defense this morning? I mean, I know initially you said that you offered these comments at a conference. I think you meant conferences, plural, but you said conference when you went on a very obscure television show and initially apologized for what you said were inappropriate comments. And now today your defense is that you're not a politician. Is that the best you can come up with?
The best I come up with is to really just apologize for an inexcusable.
Well, but I want to know, I mean, the pervasiveness of your quotes is so much that it has to be more than that. It has to be more than just an episodic mistake that you made. Well, here, let me keep going. See if this helps you any. What did you mean when you said you wish that you had been able to be transparent, but you'd rather have the law than not?
Once again, it was my trying to conjecture about a political process in which I'm not an expert.
Well, what did you mean when you said it was written in a tortured way to make sure the CBO didn't score the mandate as a tax?
Once again, it was using inappropriate language to try to sound impressive about something to my colleagues.
You see a trend developing here, Professor Gruber?
I don't understand the question.
It's a lot of stupid quotes you've made. That's the trend.
A lot of
you see them?
Inexcusable quotes. Yes.
Right. And again, your defense is that you're not a politician. The lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. Well, what does a non-politician do in talking about political advantages?
A non-politician is talking about political advantages to try to make himself seem smarter by conjecturing about something he doesn't really know.
So you're a professor at MIT and you're worried about not looking smart enough?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you succeeded if that was your goal. Now, I want to ask you, are you sorry? When did you realize that these comments were inappropriate? Because it took you about a year to apologize, so I'm trying to figure out if you realized sooner that they were inappropriate, or was it just the morning before you went on MSNBC that you realized that it was inappropriate? When did you realize that these comments are indefensible and inappropriate?
I honestly didn't remember making them.
You didn't remember calling your fellow citizens stupid, and you didn't remember saying that you're the only person who cares about the uninsured, that the rest of your fellow citizens don't give a damn about the uninsured? You don't remember saying that?
I don't, because they were really glib and thoughtless comments that I made.
Well, Professor Gruber, let me just tell you what it looks like from this vantage point, is that you thought that they were really pithy and really funny until the video showed up. And then even then, it took you a little while to apologize. And what I'm struggling with is whether your apology is because you said it or because you meant it. Which are you apologizing for? Because you said it or because you meant it?
I didn't mean it. I'm apologizing.
All of these quotes that I just read to you, you didn't mean a single one of them. Not a one.
What I said, Congressman, is that I was using glib, thoughtless, and really inexcusable language.
You used them a lot. You used them a lot, Professor Gruber, which tends to undercut the notion that you were sorry for an episodic misstatement. I just read to you about 10. You see why people might possibly think the apology is a little disingenuous? Maybe. I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jimmy. We will not waver in our commitment to see that justice is done for this terrible act in Benghazi. And make no mistake, justice will be done. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. We're investigating exactly what happened, but my biggest priority now is bringing those folks to justice. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. No one has been arrested. No one has been prosecuted. No one has been brought to justice. We don't even have access to the witnesses. You and the media were good enough for my 16 years as a prosecutor not to tell me how to do my job. And so far in Congress, y'all have been good enough not to tell me how to do my job. I'm not telling you how to do your job. But I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you can't answer these questions, then I'll leave you to draw whatever conclusion you want to draw about whether or not the media has provided sufficient oversight. Can you tell me why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi the night that he was killed? Do you know? Does it bother you whether or not you know why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi? Do you know why we were the last flag flying in Benghazi after the British had left and the Red Cross had been bombed? Do you know why requests for additional security were denied? Do you know why an ambassador asking for more security days and weeks before he was murdered and those requests went unheeded? Do you know the answer to why those requests went unheeded? Do you know why no assets were deployed during the siege? And I've heard the explanation, which defies logic, frankly, that we couldn't have gotten there in time. But you know they didn't know when it was going to end. So how can you possibly cite that as an excuse? Do you know whether the president called any of our allies and said, can you help? We have men under attack. Can you answer that? Do any of you know why Susan Rice was picked? The Secretary of State did not go. She says she doesn't like Sunday talk shows. That's the only media venue she does not like, if that's true. Why was Susan Rice on the 5 Sunday talk shows? Do you know the origin of this mythology that it was spawned as a spontaneous reaction to a video? Do you know where that started? Do you know how we got from no evidence of that to that being the official position of the administration? In conclusion, Congress is supposed to provide oversight. The voters are supposed to provide oversight. And you were supposed to provide oversight. That's why you have special liberties, and that's why you have special protections. I am not surprised that the President of the United States called this a phony scandal. I'm not surprised that Secretary Clinton asked, what difference does it make? I'm not even surprised that Jay Carney said Benghazi happened a long time ago. I'm just surprised at how many people bought it. Mr. Speaker, I'll withdraw my point of order and rise in opposition to the motion to recommit.
The reservation is withdrawn and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to talk for just a moment as colleagues, not as Republicans or Democrats, not as members of the majority or the minority, but colleagues who are blessed to serve in the United States House of Representatives, the People's House, with all the tradition, with all the history, with all the laws that have been passed, with all the lives that have been impacted. I want us to talk as colleagues, because our foundational document gave us, as the House, unique powers and responsibilities. We run every 2 years because they intended for us to be closest to the people. The President was given different duties and powers. The President was given the duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. So my question, Mr. Speaker, is what does that mean to you, that the laws be faithfully executed? We know the President can veto a bill for any reason or no reason. We know the President can refuse to defend the constitutionality of a statute, even one that he signs into law. We know the President can issue pardons for violations of the very laws that we pass. And we know that the President has prosecutorial discretion as evidenced and used through his U.S. attorneys. Mr. Speaker, that is a lot of power. What are we to do when that amount of power is not enough? What are we to do when this President or any President decides to selectively enforce a portion of a law and ignore other portions of that law? What do we do, Mr. Speaker, regardless of motivation, when a president nullifies our vote by failing to faithfully execute the law? How do we explain waivers and exemptions and delays in a bill passed by Congress and affirmed by the United States Supreme Court? How do we explain away a refusal to enforce mandatory minimums that were passed by Congress and affirmed by the Supreme Court? And why pursue, Mr. Speaker, immigration reform if presidents can turn off the very provisions that we pass? You know, in the oath that brand new citizens take, it contains 6 different references to the law. If it's good enough for us to ask brand new citizens to affirm their devotion to the law, is it too much to ask that the President do the same? If a president can change some laws, can he change all laws? Can he change election laws? Can he change discrimination laws? Are there any laws under your theory that he actually has to enforce? What is our recourse, Mr. Speaker? What is our remedy? Some would argue the framers gave us the power of the purse and the power of impeachment, but Mr. Speaker, those are punishments, those are not remedies. What is the remedy if we want the executive to enforce our work? This bill simply gives us standing when our votes are nullified. This bill allows us to petition the judicial branch for an order requiring the executive branch to faithfully execute the law. Mr. Speaker, we are not held in high public esteem right now. Maybe members of Congress would be respected more if we respected ourselves enough to require that when we pass something, it be treated as law. Maybe we would be more respected if we had a firmly rooted expectation that when we pass something as law, it be treated as law. Maybe we would be more respected if we put down party labels and a desire to keep or retain or acquire gavels and picked up the history, the tradition, and the honor of this, the people's house. Mr. Speaker, the House of Representatives does not exist to pass suggestions. We do not exist to pass ideas. We make law. And while you are free to stand and clap when any president comes into this hallowed chamber and promises to do it with or without you, I will never stand and clap when any president, no matter whether he's your party or mine, promises to make us a constitutional anomaly and an afterthought. We make law.
Expired.